Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachadine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desakadine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Vivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare. Guess what? Bhagavad Gita. You guessed it. It's a nice painting. It's depicting Arjuna with his bow in hand, ready to drop his bow in hand as he's overseeing the two armies, the Kauravas and the Pandavas, the vast array of the battlefield. And the topic, as you probably already know, is our Arjuna moment. The background of Bhagavad Gita, you all are also familiar with. The two cousin brothers. Actually, the term Pandavas is unnatural. It was derived by Duryodhana to distinguish they're all Kauravas, they're descendants of Kuru. King Kuru is their ancestor, so they're all Kauravas. They're all from the same family. They're cousins, different fathers. Different fathers of their fathers, grandfathers, but they're from this very ancient king, Kuru. So they're all Kauravas. But to make it us and them became the Pandavas. And they're the them, they're the Pandavas. Because we're the Kauravas. So the two cousin brothers had a quarrel. And without all the history, because Mahabharata is really big, you don't retell the whole Mahabharata. But the issue had to do with who would be the successor king. By law of ancestry, by standard law, the eldest son would become the next king. But the eldest son being blind, he was ineligible to become king. And so the next son became the king, Pandu, thus the Pandavas. When Pandu died, his sons were born first, so his sons were entitled to the throne. But the blind king's sons, 100 sons, there's a lot of sons. You know how the 100 sons came to be? When the wife of Dhritarashtra, Gandhari, heard that Kunti's son, Yudhishthira, was born first, she was pregnant. And when she was heard that the other queen's son gave birth first, she pounded her abdomen, and out came 100 sons. Don't ask me how that happened. And so the father of the 100 sons, Dhritarashtra, the blind Dhritarashtra, still was holding on to the hope that his eldest son, Duryodhana, would become the incumbent emperor of the world. And so that was the source of the tension. And it ended so many attempts, including Krishna coming to make a peace settlement, no. So there was war. And the scene of the battlefield is the war is about to begin, and Arjuna, being the virtuous follower of Dharma, wanted Krishna to draw his charity between the two armies. He saw a chapter 1 Bhagavad Gita, this side, that side. And he's having his Arjuna moment. He's feeling great distress and anxiety. My dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. It wasn't about getting fired at the office or something like that. He's feeling anxiety. Great distress. My whole body is trembling, my hair standing on end, my bow Gandiva is slipping from my hand, and my skin is burning. Those are symptoms of anxiety, in case you didn't recognize. I'm now unable to stand any longer. I'm forgetting myself, and my mind is reeling. I see only causes of misfortune. And it goes on, this is verse 30, here it comes, verse 45. Better for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra, weapons in hand, were to kill me unarmed and unresisting on the battlefield. That's pretty definitive. Like, I give up. If the emotions are too much, his virtuous reasons, they're good reasons, good sounding reasons, with one big exception. It's not what Krishna wants. Which is, so here, the lesson is, virtue is way up there, and even above virtue is what Krishna wants. But because what Krishna wants is the ultimate of virtue, that is, Pratranaya sadhunam vinashaya traduskatam dharma samsthapanartaya sambhavami yuge, you all know the verse. Krishna wanted that. And he wanted Arjuna to be his instrument, and Arjuna is dropping his bow, as you see in the painting. So our Arjuna moments are where we also become bewildered about, in this circumstance, or that circumstance, or another circumstance, and sometimes they collide. What to do? What's appropriate for me in this conflicting circumstance? And in that place of anxiety and uncertainty, these negative emotions are abundant. Now, the lesson, one of the lessons, is these conflicting situations give rise to a possibility of some higher consciousness or the highest yoga, bhakti yoga. So if you can make that connection with Krishna as Arjuna did, you're doing very well. Krishna guided Arjuna out of these negative emotions to the highest wisdom of Bhagavad Gita, naturally, from what's on the left side to what's on the right side. He's ready to go. Now, what's the root? We know from chapter 2, Bhagavad Gita, the root. Identification with the body. Why identification with the body? Why do you have a body? Because of desire separate from Krishna's desire. So when people have a desire separate from Krishna's desire, Krishna could say no, but Krishna doesn't say no. He doesn't interfere with our free will choices. He says, it's not a good idea. I want to enjoy. We were just reading the Bhagavatam this morning, misguided aim of life, or absorption in I and mine. So, driven by the I, false conception of I, that's false ego, comes that I am this body, that what's mine is what comes from this body. Very logical, if you're a materialist. What's mine is what comes from this body. So my work, I'm attached to the fruits of my work because it's mine. And with the fruits of my work, I can get money. And with money, I can get stuff. And the stuff becomes mine, the house becomes mine, the car becomes mine, bank balance becomes mine, taxes become mine, debts become mine. It's all mine. And I got lots of mine. And then people fight over, no, it's mine. No, interpersonally and internationally in every scale you want to look at. One group of ants and another group of ants, they sometimes go at it over I and mine. So whatever the scale, that's the material circumstance. Prabhupada writes, the illusioned living entity appears in so many forms, offered by the external energy of the Lord, while enjoying in the modes of material nature, the encaged living entity misconceives thinking in terms of I and mine. So here's like a cat and dog fight. On this side and on that side, it's mine and I and mine conception. Here's another image. I like the images. So here's a nice image. Supposing there's a pond of water and it's very calm because there's no wind, and someone drops a little pebble in the water, and it's fine. Little blip, and concentric circles expand out. Very nice. And then over there, somebody else puts a little pebble, and the same thing happens. Little blip, and concentric circles until they intersect with one another. And then you get a clashing effect. And then you take two living entities, and you get conflicts in the I and mine conception. It's not just peaceful, it's conflicting. But then supposing you have those two fellows take their pebble and place their pebble in the exact same spot. There's a center. When the center makes that little flashing signal, the ripple effect goes out, concentric circles go out, but they enhance one another. That's when there's the same center. Now people try to do that with isms, with this center and that center. It's artificial. It's artificial because it's not what the real center is. They're just trying to bring about a peaceful situation in a turbulent atmosphere. So arbitrarily picking some ism isn't going to work. Yeah, it's a nice try, but it's not going to work. So what will work if that's not going to work? What's actually the center? And therefore, free will choices need to be guided by intelligence, and intelligence is to know what the center is. What the center is, the classic example, the watering the root of a tree. If you water the root of the tree, then the branches of the tree, the twigs of the tree, the trunk of the tree, the limbs of the tree, all little parts of the tree, including the roots of the tree, get nourished because of watering the root of the tree. So what's the root of all existence? Now, some people are too busy, I and mine, and they don't even think these thoughts. But supposing somebody understands the I and mine doesn't work, too much conflict, and it's painful, and I'm suffering and others are suffering, and there's got to be a better way to do this. Find the root of existence. Here's Srila Prabhupada's purport to a verse in Uddhava Gita, Canto 11, Chapter 17. One who remains attached to the bodily concept of family and friends cannot possibly give up false egoism of I and mine, or I am everything and everything is mine. Now people are used to that. It's like, that's life. Nice to have friends and family. It's nice. That's nice. That's without friends and without family, but what's nice? So let's do it nice. But in the misguided civilization that doesn't understand the distinction between the soul and the coverings of the soul, that's the problem. And it's pretty pervasive. Pretty pervasive. There's all kinds of reinforcements for all of that. One who is actually learned must give up the illusory conception of life in which one thinks, false ego, I am this material body, and everything in relation with this body is mine. It's repeating the same theme because that's life. We repeat that misconception of the self. Narada Muni instructed Vyasadeva to meditate on the absolute truth, who then wrote a commentary on Vedanta Sutra. I mean, that was pretty quick. There's steps. I just spent some time this morning and early afternoon going through Canto 1, Chapter 7, verses 4 through 7. And that's what came out of this discussion. That is, Narada, as the spiritual master, instructing Vyas, who is a literary incarnation of the personality of Godhead. It was just, for purposes of aesthetics, because even the personality of Godhead needs the spiritual master, what to speak of us. So, hearing from Narada, Vyas sat in meditation, trance of the samadhi, and then he had this realization, and this realization became the basis of Srimad Bhagavatam. And so what he saw in that trance of samadhi is the basis of Srimad Bhagavatam. So it's really good to know what's in that samadhi. I mean, I'm familiar with what was said. Very submissive young boy. He's a little restless, isn't he? Is this your son? No? Is it your son?
He's my son, too, Maharaj.
Okay. Young boy, sit down. Sit down. And stay for at least 3 minutes. Okay? He's saying no. Got your number. You won't be a good student of Bhagavad Gita because you can't hear. You're going to have some problems. You are a problem. You'll become bigger problems unless you hear. Good luck. Going forward. Mom and Dad, good luck. So, what did Vyasadeva see in his trance of meditation before he wrote commentary on Vedanta Sutra? He saw the personality of Godhead, apashat purusham purnam, mayam cha tad apashrayam. That's what he saw. That's one of the things that he saw. Apashat, he saw purusham purnam. He saw the Supreme Person. Then he saw the linking process between himself or the soul and the Pashat Purusham Purnam. Purusha Purnam, the Supreme Person. He saw the linking process, devotional service. So we may not see that devotional service, but we can hear Srimad Bhagavatam, and through Srimad Bhagavatam receive the same realization, or the same essence of that realization. We may not be in samadhi. But we can hear the sound, vibration of realization of Vyas through that samadhi. And he's carrying the personality of Godhead's Shaktis. He's empowered representative of the personality of Godhead to do what it did. And he taught us the same, watering the root of the tree, and then the fruits that come from the tree that's being watered at the root level, those fruits are then offered to Krishna. It's very simple. Principle is very simple. And that's meant to be a purpose of our life. So, back to the question, are Arjuna moments? When you, from time to time, find yourself in a situation that anxiety, distress, or worse, what do you do? Panic, you just, there's statistics. Anxiety, clinical anxiety disorders are the biggest cause of pharmaceutical companies supplying remedies that don't supply the remedy. A tablet doesn't supply the remedy. And it medically, it's bigger than heart disease. The mind is more problematic than the body in terms of our modern society. It's not the lack of amenities or lack of ability to make adjustments to accommodate the cause of distress. People are thinking, okay, just adjust things a little bit. The distress will be diminished and I'll become happy again. Because we want happy. We want happiness. But it isn't derived by material configurations and adjusting material configurations, no matter how many ways you do it. There needs to be a purpose, a higher purpose. Now, our founder Acharya came to the Western world to give us this Bhagavad Gita, the understanding, specifically, we all know, Krishna put Arjuna in that emotional turmoil so that Krishna could speak Bhagavad Gita, because he wanted to speak Bhagavad Gita, leave behind him teachings, and he chose Arjuna as the one. In a situation where there were scholarly people and brahmanas and highly elevated this and that, and Arjuna was a warrior and a military man and administrator involved in politics and diplomacy, and he's a devotee, and because he's a devotee, he became the best recipient of Bhagavad Gita's message. Uddhava later also became the recipient of. It's similar. Anyways, nice. They're both, Arjuna and Uddhava were cousins, Krishna's cousins, because they're all from the same royal family. Just that Arjuna's father and mother were different, and Uddhava's father and mother were different, but their ancestors were the same. Krishna's father was Vasudeva. And Vasudeva had a brother. And his brother, he had a number of brothers. One of his brothers' name was Devabhaga. Devabhaga had a son named Uddhava. Uddhava, they're cousins. Anyway, without all that, how the family tree works. They're cousins and cousins and cousins. But, one of them is a supreme, and the other is a cousin, a friend and devotee of the supreme. And they're the fit recipient. So we can't arrange to be family members of Krishna. We can be arranged to be devotees of Krishna, and that eligibility become able to receive from our founder Acharya that means of relieving ourselves from the material circumstance. That's why we're together. In one sense, we're of the same spiritual family. Our mothers and fathers are all kinds of different. That's quite okay. It's quite okay. But there's a spiritual father, and here he is, our founder Acharya. Now this is a moment where Srila Prabhupada looks very meditative, and who knows what his thought is upon, besides upon Krishna, but wishing that the suffering that he sees in this world is mitigated and doesn't look making him happy. But on the other hand, I'll just a little telling of a story, recent I travel sometimes. And about 10 days ago, I was in the other side of the country. The other side of the country place was in San Jose, California. And there's a temple in San Jose called ISKCON Silicon Valley, ISV, ISKCON Silicon Valley. And boy, those devotees like book distribution. Wow. They're already ramping up for Bhadra Purnima. They're selling sets of Bhagavatams like they're cups of water. So anyway, while I was there was a plan that there was going to be a gathering of Prabhupada disciples from the area. And so there was a luncheon. So I'm sitting at a table with just Prabhupada disciples sitting at the table. And kind of over here in the middle was Vaisheshya Prabhu, who's Prabhupada disciple, who's in charge of that center. And on this side and that side were Shyamasundar Prabhu and Guru Das, both of whom had years of intimate association with Prabhupada, and both wrote their memoirs about what it was like, what were the events, and in details of being with Prabhupada. And one of the things that came out from that discussion you were doing pretty well. Now you got restless again. And I'm telling a Prabhupada story. Listen carefully. Young man. I'm telling a Prabhupada story. This is our founder, Acharya. So you see his picture on the screen up here? Look, turn your head and look at the screen, please. That's our founder, Acharya. And I'm telling a story about his life. And in the image, he looks very serious because he's contemplating the suffering of living entities that's unnecessary. You don't like to see suffering. Unnecessary suffering that's double. Not. At the same time, Prabhupada had a great sense of humor. This was, I was just about to tell. Both of them, Vaisheshya Prabhu was in the middle. And this one, Shyamsundar, he was Prabhupada's personal secretary for 4 years. Every day for 4 years, he is with Prabhupada by his side. And one of his assignments was to record everything that Prabhupada said, because he knew at some point he wasn't going to be around. So for posterity's sake, for our sake, everything is recorded. And then it's kept in a library in North Carolina. The Bhaktivedanta Archives is the place where they house the original, and then the digitalized versions of the original of everything he said. And then, room conversations, classes, morning walks, you name it. It's all recorded because Shyamasundar did it, because he was right by his side. 4 years, every day for 4 years. Think about that. Not just had a dream, the Prabhupada appeared to him in a dream or something. 4 years every day. And then that meant lots of intimate moments, meaning like on into the night, or with people, or alone, or this and that. And 4 years. Wow. He's not going to be around forever. So he wrote his a book, three-volume book of his. So he's sitting there live, Shyamsundar over here in Gurudas, and I just completed reading his book, or hearing an audio recording of his book, and so much association. So they're narrating about Prabhupada, and as they're narrating, they're laughing, and then they were saying that being with Prabhupada was always a riot. He had such a sense of humor, super, super strong wit. Here's a little example. One time, Guru Das said they were passing a soccer field in India. There were boys playing soccer in a soccer field. So Guru Das asked Prabhupada, when you were a boy, did you play sports? And Prabhupada lifted his head up and said, I was the captain of the debate team. Anyway, many nice things. So they said he had a habit, he would tilt his head back and his laughter would come from his mouth, but his whole body would laugh. And he would sometimes laugh so hard, tears would come to his eyes. He couldn't stop laughing. And then one said yes, and Prabhupada said that a person that doesn't have laughter is a dead man. Meaning it was a sign of life. And then Shamsundar said, one time I asked Prabhupada, what is laughter? And Prabhupada stopped and thought and said, laughter is when you're expecting a certain outcome and something else other than your expectation happens. Like surprise. Now, surprise can be sadness, but it's an emotion. You have an expectation, and then it didn't happen. So, although he looks very, I'm going down this path because he looks very serious, and that's because he wanted people to be happy. He didn't want them to have an unending Arjuna moment of distress and anxiety. And it happens in this world where some people don't know anything but that. And that's unfortunate. It's completely unnecessary. It's unnatural. It's a diseased condition. And there's the healthy condition. He wants to administer the medicine. And he knows the medicine. That's our Bhagavad Gita. So what do? Just in this morning's class, we were reading Canto 2, Chapter 3, verse number 1. Canto 2, Chapter 3 is devotional service, change of heart. Pure devotional service, change of heart. And that's how people can become happy. And if people don't take that option, and of course it's not just going into a supermarket and I'll take some of those, please. It's a cultivation. But by that choice of making the cultivation, as all of us are doing, we're here because that's a choice that we've made. And Friday evening we could be somewhere else doing something else, but here we are. And it's not just to overcome negative emotion, it's to experience what real life is, real happiness is. The connection with Krishna. So the Arjuna moment is due to disconnect. And when there's disconnect, there's this other experience. Now, Arjuna is Krishna's devotee, as you know. In case you don't know, now you'll know. Whenever Krishna appears, Arjuna is always with him. They're like inseparable, like Krishna and Radha. Krishna is always with Radha, just like the sunshine is always with the sun. Arjuna is always with Krishna. He's an eternal associate. He's not always known by the name Arjuna. Sometimes it's Narayan. The Nara part is Arjuna. He's always with Narayan. He's always with the Supreme Lord. So there's no question of his being in distress and in anxiety, but he takes the role by Krishna's arrangement. So we can have the lesson of how to overcome those situations that we chose of separate enjoyment. That's the root, misdirected aim of life. So how do you do the course correction? Get good GPS. Yeah, put in the right destination, Krishna Bhakti. And you're good to go. I mean, in the course of getting from where you are to where you want to go, there's maybe some bumps in the road, like for us to get here. A little circuitous. But we got here. We had a good GPS. So follow the system, the submission, Mam Ekam Sharanam. Ekam Sharanam, very simple, 3 words. Ekam, means singular, nothing else but. We're doing other stuff besides that one, then we're doing some of that one. We're doing some of the other things, and there's some distress. Unnecessary distress. Unnecessary anxiety, unnecessary suffering. It happens. So, in the association of those that are heading with us on the same journey, I'm looking around the room to see what the age is, and some of you are of the age probably where you have friends or children or dependents or some relatives that just was a big wave of graduation, right? High school graduation, college graduations, it's just a stage of life. And then what comes next is another anxiety. Which college do I go to? Or what job do I take? Or, so forth and so on. And, there's bumps in the road. But that's okay. Bumps in the road are fine. There's just roads sometimes are smooth and sometimes are bumpy. Now, how do you respond to that? That's the Arjuna moments. And there's a tendency, there's a solution. Stay fixed on the higher purpose. Practice, just reset. Supposing Prabhupada gives this example, I'm going to end. Prabhupada gives the example of a child walking. It's a very simple example. Because within the child is the tendency or capacity to walk. Just by practice. And if they practice, they may take a step or two and then tumble. Then get back up. Another step or two and tumble. And do that enough times, they keep taking steps because the walking propensity within, it comes out. And after a little while, they're not just walking, they're running around. Here and there, and like this fellow. So, walking propensity is within, and devotion to the Supreme is within. So if there's some distraction and some distress or some anxiety or some something, Arjuna moments, step back, pause, mode of goodness, become in a little reflective space. What's going on is I forgot Krishna. And if I remember Krishna, then it's like turning on the light in the darkness. The darkness is dispelled, and now I can see a little bit better than I could in the darkness. Because you can stay in the darkness, that's a choice. But don't stay in the darkness. Take some light. Take the light of the Bhagavad Gita, the light of the Bhagavat, the light of devotee association, and stay in the light. And keep going. In such a manner that the light, you get closer to the light source. Or ultimately to the Supreme Person. To our forgotten loving relationship. It's quite simple. In principle, it's quite simple. It's a little meandering because we're complicated. We have attachments to the temporary. Learn, because it's natural to do so, become attached to the eternal. Have relationships with the temporary, that's fine. And those relationships with the temporary need their place as in connection with the eternal. And that's spiritual life. That's our training. So let's see if there's some discussion. I'll go back to the topic, our Arjuna moments. Yes.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Go ahead, speak. Go ahead, just speak.
such an honor to have you again. Please accept our humble request.
Don't hold your breath. It's going to be a while till I come around again.
So Maharaj, just getting back to the analogy you gave about us walking the road, and we tend to forget the fact that the root is the source of all our existence.
Yes.
But sometimes the stems, the branches also need some attention, which is
Yeah,
our
okay.
relationship with our family, with our blood, with our
Okay.
spouse, with
Okay,
our friends.
do that.
So how do you draw a line where the
No, no,
attachment
no.
is?
No, it's not a two-pocket pro. Even while you're attending to the branches or the twigs or the family or the finance or the, relationships or the in-laws or, whatever it is, don't forget, don't disconnect. Now, how do you not disconnect? Because you're dealing with stuff. Dealing with stuff, you're not paying attention to the root. You're dealing with stuff. The answer is if you're attached to the root, it's there, even when you're dealing with stuff, because that's your life. It's so meaningful. It's just like in this kind of example, some boys, you probably have seen it, they like mridanga, they like kirtan, and they can be sitting there in the midst of anything, and they're playing mridanga on their knees. You've seen it? Because that's their affinity. That's their happiness. There's a devotee, just this past, some of us were together in Gita Nagari for a retreat. I heard some of you went somewhere else for different reasons, but one of our guest speakers, his name is Garuda, and he is a Sanskrit scholar from Harvard. He's described, in sharing, he dreams in Sanskrit sometimes. Dreaming in Sanskrit, really? I can't read it, what to speak of dreaming. But, it's his life. It's inside, so it's on the subtle plane, it's there. And even while he's dealing with stuff, it's his nourishment. So, if it's inside, even when you're doing stuff, it's inside. And you're guided by that intelligence and that vasana, that strong force of memory and impetus to do things in a certain way and not do things in a way. You're guided by that affinity or attachment. And it leads to detachment from over-attachment to the temporary, even when you're dealing with stuff that needs to be attended to. Right? So it's attachment to the stream. Nasate vijate bhavo na bhavo vijate sataha. You said. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you so much for a wonderful class. In the beginning of the class, you explained that when we don't know what we should do in those situations, we have to do what Krishna wants us to do. But Arjuna had Krishna to guide him. But with us, how do we know what Krishna wants?
Ah. I'm just waiting for the sound to go away. How do you know anything? I mean, aside from what Krishna wants, how do you know anything? Step back and they're means of knowing things. It's a lesson from Shastra. There's three ways of knowing things. According to Jiva Goswami, their standard, through your senses, through your reasoning power, and through hearing. Pratyaksha, Anuman, and Shabda. So commonly, for example, GPS, they have a voice, you can turn it off, and it just shows you visually, but you can hear someone telling you by sound. Just, so through sound. So Shabda and Aparushaya Shabda. Trying to keep eye contact. Aparushaya Shabda means beyond the fallibilities of a human. Aparushaya Shabda. Shabda from an infallible source. And supposing you don't have Krishna right next to you, like that's the premise of your question, then you've got Bhagavad Gita. Now, okay, I've got Bhagavad Gita, but how do I know about dealing with this situation with my mother-in-law? I don't find the verse in Bhagavad Gita how to do that. Because she has this personality, and it's a little delicate. There's principles, so then intelligence is needed to apply what you know from Bhagavad Gita. So where do you get intelligence from? What Guru Sadhu Shastra, and supposing I consulted Guru Sadhu Shastra, and I'm still not sure. Then it takes, Krishna may give, there's some very nice descriptions. We just spent some time in Edison, New Jersey, on Krishna saw the cowherd boys entering the Aghasura demon. Right? The pastime, chapter 12, canto 10. And they're dear to him, and he's dear to them. Krishna is their life and soul. They can't bear to not be with Krishna. And they went inside the mouth of Aghasura demon. It was a Leela. So Krishna's perplexed. No, it's the Yogamaya potency giving Krishna that secondary rasa of compassion, and he's feeling compassion for these poor cowherd boys that entered in death personified, a demon. It says he waited for the moment where proper intelligence. No, this is the verse from Shukadeva Goswami. It's not like a commentary. He was waiting for proper intelligence. So sometimes you and I, when we're in a perplexing situation, we need intelligence to discern what's going on and what to do and why and all those things. So Super Soul, if you're sincere, you turn your attention to Krishna. It may not happen immediately. It may happen after a little delay, but you need intelligence to discern what to do and how to do it. So the starting point is, in all circumstances, don't stray from the place where the real shelter is, and intelligence can come. Okay? And it may take a while. It may take a long while, but it may take a short while. It may be instantaneous. But intelligence is the ability to discern this from that. That's like an IQ test. They test the ability. Thank you very much. I'll be done in a little while. It won't be too long. I'll stop, and then you can run around and be happy. Thank you. Guess what? I've got some cookies.
Yeah.
But you gotta sit still. Bribery. Okay, anything else? Yes,
Something online.
okay. Give him the microphone in the front.
question from Anusha Mataji.
You're right in front of the speaker. It's going to have some feedback. So can you do something? Give your phone to someone else. Okay, go ahead. Try it.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj. Why Krishna chose Arjuna for Gita besides the other four Pandavas? What was Arjuna's expertise qualification for attaining the highest Naranarayana position?
Well, he's eternal. That he did something to get that position. What did Arjuna do to get the qualification or have the intimacy with Krishna? Eternally, he's there. Now, what about us? We're not going to become Arjuna. We're not going to take his bump him out and take his place. That's not going to happen. We can be Arjuna-like. We become assistants of, and that's our Gaudiya Vaishnava teaching. We follow the great personalities. We don't replace them. We can become eternal followers of great personalities. So Arjuna didn't do something to become Arjuna. He's eternally Arjuna. That's my response to this question. Anything for the ladies' side?
One more question.
One more question.
Next question is, how do I know the decision I took is correct or incorrect? Arjuna was also in confusion until the chapter 1864, and Krishna boldly says in 1865.
You're reading really fast.
So,
Be kind to me. Slowly.
how do I know the decision I took is correct or incorrect? Arjuna was also in confusion until the chapter 1864, and Krishna boldly says in 1865, in Kali Yuga, the memory is so weak and less intelligent. How can we have our Arjuna moments with proper intelligence?
Follow Arjuna. I could elaborate, but yad yad acharati shesat tat tat eve Arjuna. We follow the Arjunas. We follow the qualified persons. So what was his qualification? Bhaktosi me sakacheti. He was Krishna's friend and his devotee. I mean, in one sense, here's again that because I was so involved in the past 2 or 3 weeks in these biographies of being with Prabhupada. Being with Prabhupada meant looking up, like the servant looks to the master. He's the master. At the same time, there was an intimacy, like one's best friend. So Prabhupada didn't, in all circumstances, hold himself, I'm up here, you're down there, please don't cross that line. He didn't do like that. He would sometimes do like that. He would sometimes be really heavy, and sometimes just like a friend, with laughing and what do you think, Shyamasundar? Again and again. Prabhupada didn't need his opinion, but he was treating him like a friend. So there's an intimacy, a friendship that goes along with having a person who one looks to as an authority. It takes maturity to know when is it appropriate to, different persons have different personalities. So some persons could never enter into that intimacy feature of being like a friend to an elevated person. But some elevated persons are so open that they invite it. Would invite with the right people, would invite that friendship mood. So when one has the personality and character of being first and foremost always devoted, so that if the spiritual master, in this case Prabhupada, wanted something. That was it. That was it. I mean, here's a little example, because it's just, they're in a train, that Prabhupada is in a train ride from Bombay to Calcutta with a whole train full of devotees going to a festival in Calcutta. And they pass through Delhi. And a man gets on the train because you stops. That, a frumpy looking guy. And without all the detail, Prabhupada's in a first class car, and Guru Das was his assistant. The guru and his assistant. And Guru Das was looking at the guy with his, behavior that was very strange. And they were speaking in Hindi, and he didn't understand. And the man wanted Prabhupada to establish a temple in Delhi, and he was willing to help him establish a temple in Delhi. So Prabhupada turned to Guru Das and said, I want you to get down in Delhi, next stop. Get off with this man. He's volunteering. He'll help establish a temple. And they're on their way. So it's just with the complete surprise, unpreparedness of anything. And, they give me 5 names of person, and they got off the train with their luggage, and they didn't get to where the destination was. So be prepared if circumstance inspires the spiritual master to say X, then it's X. But had been so much looking forward to being with Prabhupada and just get off the train. He got off the train and went through the exercise of establishing a temple. And the guy was a case. But nonetheless, the instructions of the spiritual master, and in the course of time, things started to happen. So there's adventure in spiritual life, there's challenge in spiritual life, but there's always the connection with the absolute truth, the connection with serving the Supreme Person through the medium of the spiritual master is our way of life. And it's wonderful. It's the path, the journey to self-realization. I'm going to end. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
His Holiness Rupa Swami Maharaj ki.
Mahaprashadam ki
Jai.
Yeah.
I brought some, and I think somebody else made some. This is from my traveling sankirtan with cookies.